So we'll do some sometimes, always, never questions. Always fun. So number one, an acute triangle is blank congruent to an obtuse triangle. So can an acute triangle sometimes be congruent to an obtuse triangle? Always or never be congruent to an acute triangle. So an acute triangle is one that has where all three angles are acute, right? Less than 90. Whereas an obtuse triangle has exactly one angle that's greater than 90. So that can never happen, right? Because remember, triangles have to have all three sides and all three angles be congruent in order to be congruent. And so if one angle here is obtuse and none of these angles are obtuse, then that means there's always one angle that can never be congruent, right? All right, so those are never congruent. Number two, a polygon is blank congruent to itself. So remember, we have this property called the reflexive property, which says that anything is congruent to itself, right? And so that's always true. All right, and then number three, a right triangle is congruent to another right triangle. Sometimes, right? Not all right triangles are congruent, but they could be. That makes it possible for them to be congruent because they each have one right angle, so they're off to a good start. And then it just depends on what the other two angles and all three sides are. All right, so here another sometimes, always, never. So if triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ, then A is blank congruent to angle A is blank congruent to angle Y, right? So A is first and Y is second. So they're not necessarily congruent, but they could be. So it could be an isosceles triangle where A and X are congruent and A and B are congruent, and then therefore A and Y would be congruent. So that's sometimes, but definitely not always, right? A and X would always be congruent. Number five, same congruent statement, then angle B is congruent to angle Y. B and Y are both in the middle, therefore they're always congruent, right? Based on that congruent statement. So that's an always. And then number six, same congruent statement, side AB is congruent to side YZ. So AB are the first two, YZ are the last two. So not necessarily, right? They could be congruent, but not always. So sometimes on that one.